What's going on, YouTube? RDAP Dan here, Federal Prison Time Consulting. Hope you guys are having a really good Friday. I know I am. Thank God it's Friday. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about Felicity Huffman as she's getting ready to get sentenced in about 15 minutes, 2:30. So we give you guys a few minutes to join the room. Everybody say hello. Come in, congregate a little bit. If you haven't done so, take this moment to go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Just go ahead and tap on the bell up in the top right hand corner of your screen. Also, make sure you turn on your notifications so you receive updates when we post live videos or any other pre-recorded videos. We posted a pretty cool video last week we took a trip back to Coleman Federal Prison where I actually did my prison sentence, and I took a small group of guys up there with me, some film crew guys that actually went up and recorded everything. So that was a lot of fun. We got some pretty good footage. We drove through the prison. We got to take a look at the low, the camp, the medium, the two penitentiaries. Just try to give you guys a little view of what federal prison looks like. We're going to be taking a drive up to Miami probably next week to try to see what type of footage we can get of Miami Federal Prison. What's going on, Bonnie, Kevin, McLovin? What's going on, everybody? Welcome, welcome. Spelling error first in the room. You get a high five for that. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Dan Wise. I'm a federal prison consultant. We specialize in assisting anywhere from white-collar individuals to nonviolent first-time offenders, and really everything in between of what federal prison could possibly be like, what you can do to mitigate your sentence, to reduce your sentence, what type of effort you should be putting into narratives, reference letters, getting involved in your community, if your attorney is going to be preparing a sentencing memo, which I really hope they are. We do see from time to time where that doesn't happen. So you just want to make sure you have a full understanding how to do complete accountability with your attorney. You don't want to have any unanswered questions when it comes time to get ready to be sentenced. You don't want to lay in a potential bunk bed at some point wondering what could you have done differently. So again, we are experts here at Federal Prison Time. We have an amazing team of experts from Jenny, Tom Root, many of you remember Angela, everything from substance abuse evaluations to helping you prepare motions, helping you with early termination off of your supervised release. So just a little bit of everything that can help kind of transition the situation a little bit better. So here in Boston, people have expressed outrage that she might get probation. She might get probation, Bonnie, but you got to remember, it's not necessarily just because of who she is. It also has a lot to do with her guidelines. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. There's a big difference between like Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin. We're talking about the Varsity Blues case, for those of you that don't know, the college admin scandal. The major scandal took place earlier in the year. Roy Hobbs, Mike Freshco. Freshco is a client of ours that actually he's in the federal halfway house right now in Miami. So welcome Freshco. So a lot of people are thinking this is so unfair. She's going to get probation. Well, this is her guidelines. Her guidelines after everything's said and done with her cooperation. And she cooperated early on. Let's talk about what Felicity Huffman did right. And she pretty much went through exactly every hoop that we would want to see a potential client go through. She worked on narrative. She worked on reference letters. She worked on taking accountability right away. She didn't blame anybody. She didn't waste any time. Pretty much from the start of this thing, she was taking responsibility for what she did. She's got to pay a $20,000 fine back. Her guideline range, she's at a base offense level of 7. So her guidelines call for 0 to 6 months. Now, of course, her attorney is going to argue for 0 from the government's perspective. And there's actually, in the description of this video, I put a link to her actual plea agreement. We uploaded her plea agreement to our Google Drive. So if you want to download the plea agreement, go ahead. You can download it, stare at it, wipe your ass with it, whatever you want to do. It's up to you. But it's in the description of this video. So her guideline range is 0 to 6 months. The government is recommending low end of the guidelines. So that could be 1 month, 2 months, 6 months. We don't know. We know it's not going to be 6 months. So almost every individual we see that's getting ready to go into prison for the first time, when they cooperate and they don't drag the government through the mud or trying to think they're not guilty or trying to find a way out of it. I mean, this case, everybody in this case, it's clear as day as they're guilty. So Felicity Huffman, she pled guilty to one count of conspiracy to commit mail fraud and honest services mail fraud. Our max penalty on that crime is up to 20 years in prison and a max of 3 years supervised released. Now, just because that's the max, the judge can go above the guidelines, but the judge couldn't go higher than 20 years. It's very rare. The government is not recommending probation. The government is recommending the low end of the guidelines, which is 0 to 6, but they're not recommending probation. But basically, if the judge says probation, the government's going to get out of the way and they're not going to object. And there's nothing abnormal about that. We see that with almost every individual that cooperates, acceptance of responsibility. The earlier you cooperate, usually the less likely it is the government's going to object to anything that your attorney may be asking within reason. So the attorney's going to ask for 0 because she technically qualifies for 0 based on the guidelines. So will she get 0? Probably not. I think it's very likely she'll see at least 30 days in federal prison. And then after that, the government's recommending 12 months supervised release and it's part of her plea deal that she pays a $20,000 fine. Supervised release is basically the same thing as probation. Yes, Mike Sorrentino, Jersey Shore, got released yesterday. He served his full 8 months in there. He didn't go to the halfway house at all. So he did his entire 8 months in, where was he at? Over at, I forgot the name of the prison off the top of my head right now. But, it's a lot of people are just really, really upset right now because they think that she's getting over on the government because of how short of a sentence that she's facing. She's only facing that short of a sentence because that's what her guideline range is. That's what she pled guilty to. She did what all of you that are thinking about going to trial, if you're guilty and you know they have something on you and you don't want to face the music of the possibility of going to prison, Otisville, thank you, Kevin. Mike Sorrentino, Jersey Shore, he was over at Otisville. If you know there's a possibility that you're facing prison and you know that you had some role or some involvement and you're having a problem coming to terms with that, the sooner you come to terms for what you did and own what you did, take responsibility, give any information you have about yourself, what your involvement was, the more you make them work, the rougher it's going to be on yourself. You're not going to win. You're not going to get out of it. And this is what Aunt Becky from Full House, Lori Loughlin, this is what she's going to find out because she's already openly stated that she regrets not taking a plea deal. She would have likely been looking at a very similar plea that Felicity Huffman received. But because she didn't take a plea deal, she's basically going to get sentenced at a much higher guideline range when she goes to trial, being found guilty, unless she tries to take a last-minute plea, but it's probably not going to be as good as this plea. So there's a good chance that we'll see Lori Loughlin do a little bit of time in prison, possibly, maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years for her role in the Varsity Blues. It's hard to say you didn't know what was going on. The biggest defense that a lot of these individuals had is this is how it's always been done. Just because the way wealthy individuals have gotten their kids into high priority colleges over the last few decades, several decades, by basically giving donations, paying extra money to make it happen, doesn't make it right. It just became kind of the normal way of doing things. Well, when this whole thing got outed, and everybody started looking at everybody else and pointing fingers, it put the exposure on something that was like a good old boys club to where now the good old boys had to make an example out of the individuals that got caught. It's like if you're involved in this group and you're trying to do what everybody else has been doing and you're making too much noise, at some point there's going to be an scapegoat. And this will change how things work in the future with the rich and famous getting into these elite colleges that shouldn't be there. This wasn't just about paying money to get somebody into a college. This was paying money to have tests taken for some of the kids. It was also having kids enrolled into different types of sports that weren't actually taking any of the sports. Some of them even went as far to have photoshopped photos of actual, their faces put onto actual athletes out performing to try to get these scholarships. And the money that was donated, that's just part of the crime in the whole conspiracy to defraud. And that's just part of it. The other part of it is you got all of this money that's given to these schools in the form of donations is technically a tax write-off where these rich, wealthy people are not paying taxes on this money. So that's the other part of the crime is Felicity Huffman's probably going to be facing tax fraud crimes, maybe on a civil side where she's going to owe quite a bit of money for the taxes she didn't pay on the money that was donated. And this is going to be for everybody involved in the Varsity Blues. So you're definitely going to have your criminal side of things where people are going to, do some prison time, some probation time. But then there's also going to be the civil side where they have to pay X amount of money back on when the IRS comes after them for the money that they didn't pay taxes on, as they reported it as a donation. And it clearly was not a donation. There's a Jewish rabbi out there that claims to help individuals designate, and I'm probably going to do a story on this guy. I don't want to say his name yet because I don't need the Jewish community coming down on me, but there's a Jewish rabbi out there that claims to help people get designated to prisons that they want to go to. And the way they do it is they do it under the form of donations. So as long as you're donating $1,000 or $2,000, they will help you designate to where you want to go. For all intents and purposes, you're charging a service fee, and they don't want to pay taxes on it. So this Jewish rabbi found a way to accept it as a donation and not pay taxes on it. He was actually put in touch with me with somebody else within the prison system saying I should try to use him to help some of my individual and clients receive special designations. And I'm not going anywhere near that because it smells and looks like a future conspiracy to me. American Greed did a story on it. People got PO'd because only 1/3 of seats Ivy League schools are competitive. The rest are special admits. They were trying to get into elite universities through the lower academic standards. I'll have to follow up on what you're speaking about. But we do have the plea agreement for Felicity Huffman in the description of this video. If you want to read the plea for yourself, look at what she was facing. She wasn't facing a whole lot. The amount of money she spent wasn't as absorbent as some of the other individuals that spent money going into this. What's up, McLovin? You're watching the trial now? I mean, the sentencing now. Yeah, she's due to be sentenced in the next, her court date is in the next the next 5-10 minutes. So I imagine, we're going to know what her sentence is. I think she's going to get 30 days. I think the judge is going to set some kind of example. I mean, all eyes are watching this right now, and too many people in the past have gotten away with murder. And when this is such a public story, I do believe the judge is going to make an example out of her. One of the other things, I meant to upload it in here, is I read some of her, a letter that was sent in, a character reference letter that was sent in from somebody, and it's just horrible. It's the exact opposite of what we tell all of you guys to do. It's a reference letter that just talks about all of the good things that she's done, how she's helped out her community over the years. Nobody's doubting that she hasn't been a positive role model. No one's doubting that. And the judge isn't going to be surprised when he sees a letter come in showing the good things that she's done. What the letter should have done is, we didn't expect a friend or a colleague to make these kind of irrational decisions just for the sake of getting her child into a school for clout. To say my kid's going to this school. That's really what it all comes down to, is this inner circle of the elite want to maintain that circle of elite, and they went about doing it the wrong way. Could her child have earned their way into the college on their own? Maybe, maybe not. But they didn't chance it. They hired a consultant. They hired a consultant to help them get their child into a school. And yes, the consultant told them, donate money to this, donate money to this. We'll do what we got to do to get your child into the school. Just because you hired somebody that said they were going to do something for you, you still know that your kid's getting into a school that they didn't earn on their own. So you can blame anybody you want to blame. But at the end of the day, that is going to hit you directly in the forehead if they look. It's pierced right through everything. And this is where Aunt Becky has really crashed and burned, is she allowed herself to not own responsibility and sit there and say that she had no idea and that she's innocent and that it's the consultant's fault. You knew, again, your child didn't meet the standards to get into this school without you trying to cheat the system. And this is where Felicity Huffman really rose above and did what was necessary. These are the steps that we work with our clients when we have somebody that contacts us early enough. And not everybody's in the same state of mind. We have individuals that contact us that are talking about this isn't fair. The government's coming after me. People have done way worse crimes. I didn't murder anybody. I didn't rape anybody. I can't believe they want to sentence me to the prison time. I'm a good person. I have kids. I have sick parents. They go through all of these self-delusional reasons as to why they shouldn't be going to prison. And the reality is the sooner you can accept responsibility for what you did. And when I say accepting responsibility, I'm not just talking about the piece of paper you sign in order for the judge to give you a downward departure. How are you demonstrating your remorse? How are you demonstrating your responsibility? What does that sound and look like beyond a piece of paper given to the judge for a shorter sentence? If you can illustrate this properly, and I believe if Felicity Huffman would have done this properly, she probably wouldn't receive any prison time. I really think she's going to get the 30 days. I think the judge has to give it to her with all the looking, and really, what has she done above and beyond the average person in her situation? In her situation, I mean by first-time nonviolent white-collar criminal. What is she doing that's different than anybody else in her situation would do? She's spending every penny she has. She's throwing money at this. She's probably got the best legal defense that money can buy. But at the end of the day, anybody with money could purchase that legal defense. And yet people just like that end up going to prison every single day. So what are you doing to stick out? What are you doing to appear different? How are you giving the judge the perception that you've completely changed who you are beyond just telling them what they want to hear? That doesn't happen by accident. That doesn't happen by good luck. That happens by putting in hard work, dedication, and understanding how you can mitigate beyond what your attorneys are doing for you. And this, if she does end up going to prison, this is where she's going to fail. People put too much trust in their attorneys. And I'm not going to say you shouldn't trust your attorney, because you have to. But you also need to know how to hold your attorney accountable. And you need to know how to take control of your own life so you can do a sidestep of what you need to be focusing on that's going to complement what your attorney's doing. So if you, know how to hold your attorney accountable, you know the right questions to ask, you know what types of things you can qualify for, like self-surrendering, if you're going to qualify for safety valve, all these different variations and all these different terms that many of you maybe don't know what they are. 5K1. Many of you are wondering what you can do to shorten your sentence, and you keep asking your attorney, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And your attorney's like, well, we're negotiating a plea deal. Well, beyond that plea deal, what steps are you taking? If you think that's all that needs to be done is a plea deal, everybody says, well, the guidelines are the guidelines. I went out to a dinner party about 2 or 3 weekends ago, and there was a lady there that she happened to have a family member that was sentenced to a period of incarceration. Now, this person went to federal trial, so of course they got hammered when they lost. But she asked me, what is it you do again? And I explained to her, and she said, well, the guidelines are the guidelines. There's nothing you can do to go outside of those guidelines. And you guys have to understand that guidelines, when you look at your base offense level and your criminal category history, and you look at these guideline ranges, aside from a minimum mandatory, depending on what your crime is, the guidelines are recommended guidelines. These are advisory. That means the judge is to take these into advisement as to what type of sentence to advise, to give him a direction of where should I typically sentence somebody based on this type of a crime. However, because it's advisory, the judge can go below the guidelines and they can go above the guidelines. We just had a lady give us a call the other day that they went way above the guidelines. He took a plea deal. Guideline range was, I think, 2 to 5, something like that, and ended up getting like an 8-year sentence. Wasn't a client of ours. We can take no credit in getting an 8-year sentence. But the girlfriend or the wife or whoever it was that called, maybe the mother, was very upset, thinking this isn't fair. The judge can't do this. And it's like, no, they can. Just because he took a plea for something else doesn't mean the judge is bound to that plea deal, unless you have a very specific, like a C plea or something of that nature. But the average plea deal just states that this is the recommended guidelines. This is the recommendation from the government. This is the recommendation from federal probation. But the judge, if he feels that's not a fitting sentence, he has the ability to go up and above or down and below. And in most cases, with the clients that we work at, they see those downward departures more than not. Or they see things like probation or supervised probation or home confinement versus going to prison. We've had several clients. We've probably had well over a dozen clients now that based on their guideline range, based on what the prosecutors were asking for, based on what their attorneys told them, they were going to prison 3 to 5 years or more. And many of them received, where in some cases they got 6 months to a year of home confinement, followed by 3 to 5 years of supervised release. So it really is just It's a matter of how hard are you willing to work to create a possibility of the best possible outcome. If you're not willing to put in that time, effort, and resource, and look, it's going to cost you some resource. You're going to have to be able to figure out a way to, depending on where you're at in your situation, 3 to 10 grand. I mean, different people, different areas, but you have to be able to find resource and time and be able to put in this effort and understand what it is that you need to be doing. There's no magic wand. We're not going to say, here's a list of things you need to do, and then they just magically happen. You need to be willing to take your foot in front of your other foot and start making changes that you'll see little changes in the way you're thinking, the way you're acting, and then that's going to spill over into the type of outcome that you receive. Because creating new habits, it doesn't happen overnight. Anything worth anything is going to require struggle. It's going to require consistent change. It's going to require adaptability. You're going to have to make adaptations to the way you're thinking right now. And if you're willing to adapt that thought process and take on little tasks or take on little goals to meet your long-term goals, then we can help you receive a positive outcome. And I'm telling you, so many people, everybody likes to see the big dog go down. People like Felicity Huffman. People look at her and they think, she's no different than me. They want to see her get a lot of time in prison. She doesn't deserve to go to prison for a long time. She made a mistake. She owned her mistake, just like any of you that made a mistake. She's got a family. She's got people that care about her. She's got children. She's got the same type of things in her life that many of us have. She just happens to be a celebrity on top of it. So it's easy to sit here and pick at them, and it's not fair that she's only getting this. What do you want her to do? You want her to go do a decade in prison? She's sorry for what she did. She showed remorse. She's took immediate accountability for what she did. She never once said she's innocent or that she didn't do it. She owned it. She swallowed it. And she's going to probably do a little bit of prison time for it. But 30 days is enough. Now, to her, 30 days might be the end of the world, accustomed to the life she lives in right now. We all heard Martha Stewart crying and complaining about how hard her prison sentence was. And she went to one of the easier places out there. It's all from perspective. When you're comparing it to your McMansion and your waiters and your butlers and your housekeepers and, kind of having a team of an entourage of people doing everything for you, it's not really that different in prison when you go in there with that kind of celebrity status. Look at Mike the Situation Sorrentino. He clearly talked about how prison was not that bad. He was over at Otisville, which is one of the better prison camps you can go to. But again, that was in his realm of 500-mile radius from his release address. So he didn't go to that prison because he's a celebrity. He went to that prison because that's where he was designated to. So let's not jump so quick to just assume that they're getting over on us because they're rich. Does the sentencing recommendation guidelines typically mirror the PSR guideline? Normally, Jeff, yes. However, we do see from time to time, we have one of our clients getting sentenced on Monday where after he signed his plea deal for set guideline range, probation, remember they do your PSR after you sign your plea, the probation officer came back with a much higher guideline range that offsets what's in the PSR, but he still has a signed plea deal. So he's still stuck pleading guilty, and potentially the judge could sentence him to a much higher range because probation is recommending that the PSR is wrong and that the government didn't calculate it properly. So probation, now the judge can say, we're going to throw this plea out, go back to the drawing board and restart, or the judge could still sentence him within the guideline range of what he signed a plea to, or the judge could sentence him to the guideline range of what probation came back with. But normally, probation's pretty in line with what you're signing to in your plea agreement for the most part. But I've seen 2 cases that I've had personally in the last 6 months where that was not the case. And it was not in the favor of the client. The client signed a decent plea deal and probation came back with much higher guidelines. You guys saw one of them. He came on here, Ryan Park. Ryan Park signed a plea, I forgot, 3 to 5 years, and probation came back and it's closer to like 7 to 10 years for his plea deal. Yeah, Jeff, and that's part of the risk you take when you take a plea deal. And this is why it's so important to understand what you're signing when you're signing it and realizing that just because you're signing a plea deal, no one's obligated to do anything. That's just the deal the government's agreeing to do. The judge, everybody else still has a say in what's going to happen. So you really have to be able to hold your attorney accountable and ask the right questions and say, well, what happens if probation comes back with something different? What are my options? So, and you may still decide to take it, but if you make an informed decision, you have a much better chance of being satisfied with the outcome. When you make an uninformed decision and you find out these little loopholes that were kind of laying out there in the dust, or they didn't tell you something, and, well, they didn't think to tell you because you didn't know to ask, you can only blame yourself at the end of the day. You can hate your attorney. You can say how lazy your attorney is, how they don't answer the phone, how they didn't tell you this, they didn't tell you that. Most of you have plenty of time to do a lot of your own research, that if you really, really, really want that outcome, you're going to involve yourself. Nobody is going to work harder on your case than you're willing to work. You have to be willing to be the one to stand out on the front line. What's going on? Who's got the real time? The real time, what's going on with the case? Has she been sentenced yet? I doubt it. So it's going to be interesting to see what that sentence is. Again, I think she's going to receive a month. I think she's going to receive her month, her 12 months of supervised release, pay her $20,000 fine, and she's probably going to do really well after this. After all this is said and done, she'll probably be a hotter celebrity than what she already was. Now she's got some prison credit under her belt. Who knows what kind of weird roles or reality shows she might be offered. Same thing with Jersey Shore's Mike Sorrentino. What's he going to be doing next? He went to prison. There's a million questions for him. What was it really like? We had an inside guy that was over there that was feeding us information about what he was doing on a day-to-day, workouts he was doing, who he was eating with. So it's interesting to hear. Everybody likes to watch the life of a celebrity. That's why people are tuning into this. They're watching her get sentenced right now live. But she's going to be okay. And she doesn't deserve a life sentence, guys. She didn't commit a heinous crime. She did something that has been being done for decades and decades and decades. She's just the one that's going to take the hit to stop it, which needed to happen so other people have the ability to have access to these schools. If it's just based on affordability and affording the price of it, that's one thing. But if your kid doesn't deserve to be there, you shouldn't be able to pay a fee to take that spot away from another child that does deserve to be there but doesn't have the same type of political pull. If you do want to set up a consultation with us, there's a link in the description of this video. You can set up a consultation. Also, our contact information is here if you want to shoot us an email, a phone call. Don't forget to text the word YouTube to 76626. Text the word to YouTube 76626. That'll put you on our notification list so you don't miss any of what's going on with coming up live streams, all that fun stuff. Well, that's really all I got for you guys. I just wanted to touch base on this whole Varsity Blues case. It's been interesting to watch from the beginning. It really shows you that nobody is untouchable. We live in a day and age now where cameras and cell phones and recordings is everywhere. So the day of kind of sneaking through the system is long gone. So do the right thing. People helping people, communities method. That's what this is all about. Cliff Lewis, hey Dan, I start my 30-month sentence on 9/23. Do you have any updates about the First Step Act and how? Oh, First Step Act. Got some bad news on that, and we're verifying a lot of this. But as you know, they had until January to implement a lot of these programs and classes, and we've confirmed 2 prisons right now, and I don't have the prisons in front of me. I'm going to do a video on this probably next week or the week after. 2 prisons have received extensions. One received an extension of a year, and the other received an extension of 2 years as to when they need to have these classes implemented, which are going to give you the 10 to 15 days of good time credit for every 30 days that you program. So we're seeing a lot of dragging the feet, as we kind of expected. We are seeing good time updates being made where you're getting the additional 7 days per year of good time, but we're seeing a lot of people that graduated RDAP not receiving the good time credit, and they're being told, well, we're not giving you that because you did RDAP. You can only do one or the other, which is complete BS. That is not how it was written. It has nothing to do. It's purely based on your good time. So 100%, I hope somebody does a class action lawsuit against the BOP for doing that, because it's not how Congress intended it. It's not how it's written. Jeff and Cliff are having a little conversation. I'll let Jeff and Cliff finish their conversation. They're in the middle of a bromance right now. But guys, yes, book yourself a consultation. Do not sit around. So often somebody will reach out to me and say, I've been staring at your phone number or staring at your email or watching these videos for the last 2 years and I'm getting ready to get sentenced. And then they reach out when there's not much left that can be done. If you find value in this content that we produce, if you find value in what we do, please give this video a thumbs up. That means a lot to show the support on these videos. Again, if you want to check out where I went to prison over at Coleman Federal Prison, we just posted a video last week. It's our most recent video aside from this one. We did a little drive-through of the prison. We got some pretty good footage of the penitentiaries, of the low, of the women's camp. You can actually just see women walking around, which blows my mind how easy it would have been to pull up right next to one of them and hand something to them, contraband or whatnot. So it did blow my mind how easy it was to just drive right through the prison. Going to self-surrender at Lompoc Satellite Camp on October 28th for a 12-month and a day. I wish I saw your videos before my sentencing. Can your services help me, or is it too late? The only thing we might be able to do for you, Maui, is potentially some assistance with additional halfway house or home confinement. So I would say definitely reach out to us. My contact information is in the description of this video. My phone number is 509-434-4695, 509-434-4695. But lows and camps are easy time. They are, but you're still away from your friends and family. So there's no such thing as easy time when you're taking yourself away. Yes, you're not going to be in day-to-day danger, so it's less stressful than it would if you're at a medium or a penitentiary, but it's still nonetheless, it's a mental hardship being away from those that you care about. You will find a routine. You will be able to get through this, and that's one of the biggest takeaways from all of this and how you can be successful after this journey. I have the amazing opportunity on the 21st or 23rd of this month. I'm going to the West Palm Beach halfway house here in West Palm Beach, Florida, and they're going to allow me to speak to a lot of these guys on how you can make the proper choices and how you can develop the proper mindset to avoid the self-defeating thoughts of, I'm a convicted felon, no one's going to give me a chance, how you can overcome this and be successful in life, not necessarily successful in the essence of being rich, but successful in finding satisfaction and finding value and worth with who you are and what you're going to do and how you're going to display that and not hold everybody else accountable because you put yourself in that situation. All right, guys, you guys have an amazing day. Maui, I hope I hear from you. If I don't, best of luck to you. But for the rest of you, have an amazing weekend. Do something. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing an interview live with Holly. You guys remember Holly Coleman? She's actually doing a lot right now with the Varsity Blues. She's been doing some big interviews with what these women have to face when they go into prison. So she's actually going to come on our channel, chat a little bit tomorrow. So we haven't heard from Holly in a couple months. It'll be nice to have her back. All right, guys. I miss you guys. Love you guys. I'm RDAP Dan, Federal Prison Time Consulting. People helping people. Communities method. One day at a time.